Charles and Camilla get married tomorrow. The Royal Wedding, live from noon, here on BBC One. This is BBC One, running later than planned, so page turners will now be in 15 minutes after the news with Anna Ford.
Millions of pilgrims from around the world gather in Rome for the funeral of Pope John Paul. They join 200 world leaders to say their final farewell. Thousands of jobs could be at risk at Rover after a deal to save the car maker collapses. Good afternoon. Millions of pilgrims have joined kings, presidents and prime ministers from around the world for the funeral of Pope John Paul II in Rome. Many applauded as the Pope's body was carried in a simple wooden coffin into St. Peter's Square for the open-air Requiem Mass. Emily Buchanan reports.
In life, he took the Church to the world. In death, the world came to him. Pope John Paul II's funeral service was a combination of huge grandeur and utter simplicity. The plain cypress wood coffin was carried down the steps of St. Peter's Basilica and placed on a carpet, a New Testament on top. The cardinals in turn kissed the altar as the smell of incense spread over the congregation. The Pope's chief theological advisor, Cardinal Ratzinger, began the Latin Mass, familiar to Catholics all over the world.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
The biblical readings were in Spanish and English.
Continue, my dear ones, to stand firm in the Lord.
Kings, queens, presidents and prime ministers came to pay their respects. George Bush is the first sitting US president to attend a papal funeral. Tony Blair and his Catholic wife Cherie were there. Prince Charles postponed his wedding to attend. The Pope would have been pleased to see so many representatives from other Christian churches and faiths. He also saw young people as the church's future, and part of the service was led by a trainee priest from Birmingham. Applause broke out frequently as Cardinal Ratzinger in his sermon spoke of his gratitude for the Pope's life. He told the story of Karol Wojtyła's journey from parish priest in Poland to the Vatican.
Karol Wojtyła era entuzjasta.
One man redefined the role and the power of the papacy. As the service drew to an end, the crowds knew they had witnessed history. Emily Buchanan, BBC News.
Around 5 million people have filled the streets in and around St. Peter's Square, many travelling from the Pope's native Poland to pay their own final respects. Duncan Kennedy has spent the morning with them.
48 hours ago, these people were teachers, engineers, students. This morning, in the chill air of a Roman park, they woke up as mourners. From every country, from every faith, they came to pay homage, rushing for the best view, wanting to share in everything. Many near St. Peter's watched the service on giant screens. Some couldn't watch at all. Soon the penetrating reality that this really was goodbye came to have its effect.
It's very moving. It's really all you can say. I haven't got any words for it, really.
Polish people especially have come in their thousands to make this almost a family moment. Pope John Paul's appeal transcended age, colour, religion.
To understand why so many have come is to understand Pope John Paul himself. To many of these people, he wasn't just a holy man, he was a familiar face. So the act of farewell embraces not only believers, but non-believers as well.
For so many people, the church has been deprived of its pastor. The world has lost an inspirational figure. For these people, a sacred man they simply called Il Papa. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News, St. Peter's Square.
The public service has now ended. A private burial is underway in the crypt beneath St Peter's Basilica. We can talk to Louisa Baldini, who's in St Peter's Square. Louisa, you've been amongst the people in St Peter's Square all morning. What's been their mood?
It's solemn, Anna. It's very solemn indeed. People have been joining in with prayers. They've been making the sign of the cross. They've been kneeling right here on the cobbles of St Peter's. I even saw a man who was standing on a litter bin to try and get a better view. He knelt right there on the bin. Such is the devotion of the people who've come here. I've also seen lots of people in tears. Having said that, there have been many moments of spontaneous applause, some of them lasting several minutes, and there have also been times when the crowds have been chanting together, calling, for example, for the Pope to be made a saint. There have also been groups of children that I've seen holding pictures that they've painted. There have been big screens all the way down the road here for people to follow the proceedings, but not everyone has been able to see what's been happening. And some people have been queuing all night, so they're very tired and have chosen to just sit quietly at the sides. But it doesn't seem to have mattered because there's just this overwhelming feeling that it's just very important for people to have come here today.
Louisa, thank you. Other news now. The government has promised financial support for the thousands affected by the collapse of a deal to save the car maker MG Rover. The Trade and Industry Secretary, Patricia Hewitt, visited the company's Longbridge plant to announce a £40 million package for Rover Suppliers. She also said workers who lose their jobs will be offered retraining. From Longbridge, Rajesh Merchandani reports.
Turning up for work, but for how much longer? Rover workers today are coming to terms with the news that last-ditch efforts to save the company have failed. 6,000 jobs at Longbridge are under threat.
The wife's been up all night. The place is going to go.
If I lose my job, then I'm going to struggle at my age to find a new job.
What's it going to mean for you?
I don't know. I don't know yet. It hasn't sunk in, I don't think. I don't think it's sunk into a lot of people at the moment.
Arriving to meet them, Trade Secretary Patricia Hewitt. She announced last night the company had called in administrators. Today, the government unveiled a £40 million support package for companies that supply the car firm. The money is intended to minimise the effects of the collapse on the 15,000 people who make parts for Rover. And it was suppliers like this door frame manufacturer in Birmingham that forced events yesterday when they stopped delivering components because of fears Rover couldn't pay them. It's up to the administrators to work out what Rover's worth. Parts of the business could be sold off, and it's possible the Chinese firm that pulled out of the rescue deal could now return to cherry-pick the parts of Rover that it wants, like the technology, and leave behind the parts that it doesn't want, like the liabilities. Unions at Rover think there are elements of the company that could yet be saved.
We've now got to talk and work with the government now to try and salvage whatever we can from what is still a major car manufacturing plant in our country.
The government has promised help for Rover workers and that it will try to keep some kind of car making at Longbridge. But 100 years of Rover tradition here is ending. Rajesh Merchandani, BBC News, Birmingham.
And we can talk to Rajesh Merchandani at Longbridge now. And our political correspondent Norman Smith is in Westminster. First, Rajesh, when will we hear more about Rover's financial fate?
Well, Rover's Board of Directors is meeting the firm's accountancy, its accountants right now here at Longbridge. We're expecting a decision later today. Now, the company has two options. It can either choose to go into administration or it can go into receivership. Nothing else on the table. If it goes into administration, the firm can carry on trading, except accountants will replace the Board of Directors. That's the sort of more positive outcome, though, because it shows there's at least some faith in parts of the business. It's probably the best the workforce could hope for as well. However, if Rover goes into receivership, the banks move in, they start selling off the assets to pay off the creditors. That's the worst case scenario, but we're expecting an outcome later today.
And Norman, the government's announced a financial package for the suppliers. Is this going to reduce the political impact of what's happened at Rover?
Yes, I think it will. Undoubtedly, it's very awkward for the government in the middle of an election campaign